Welcome back, Inebri-art. This is Andy of the Inebri-art podcast, and we are recording today at the New World Tavern on Main Street in Plymouth. If you hear Mondays, there's $5 burgers, Tuesday, $5 flatbreads, and I think that's what we're hitting up after this interview. So, because I don't have enough on my plate, I like to work an extra day a week at the craft beer cellar, not just record there. And a few weeks back, I just happenstance ran into our next guest, Charlile Holt. Welcome to the show.
Hey, everyone.
So the thing that really intrigued me to bring you on is you're an art appraiser.
Yes, so I mostly do it for insurance coverage, but there's a lot of different usages for it.
How did that come to be? Are you an artist by trade and you kind of fell into that? Like, how did you get to be an art appraiser?
Well, my grandfather's been an art dealer for over 40 years, mostly Naval American folk art.
Okay.
So I kind of always been around art, but I did go to school for architectural design before I switched to art history. I've sold art now for about 5 years, and it just seemed like the thing to do to make some extra money, and I get to see a lot of things that I could never afford to own myself.
That is, back in the day, I used to own a comic book shop. And
Yeah,
that was
amazing.
One of my favorite things was people would be like, "Oh, you must have an amazing collection." I'm like, "Not really." I'm like, "This is all my collection," and it kind of like comes and goes and grows, and I have something cool for 6 months, and then I get to sell it and get something else cool. And I always kind of like that aspect where I felt like my collection was always growing and changing, and even though it was always technically mine, but it wasn't mine.
It's always tough when you have to let go of your favorites, though.
Sometimes it hurts.
I did that. I did that last year, New York.
What was the favorite?
I had a series of prints by an artist named Howard Cook. He was a 20th century printmaker, mostly cityscapes, but he also he became part of the Taos movement. So he moved out towards New Mexico and did a lot of work out there as well.
So, I feel like every kid that kind of wants to become an artist, their parents sits them down and tells them they should have a backup plan because you can't really make money at art and no money's worth anything, or no art's worth anything until the artist is dead. Is that true or false?
I'll tell you what, I have pieces that are by people that have stuff hanging in the Smithsonian, and I see local people's stuff go for more money in the open market.
Really?
Yeah, people, when you're able to price your own stuff, I mean, there's just different marketplaces.
Yeah.
I have a few prints by a guy named Carol Summers, and the Smithsonian has a couple of his pieces. One of them, the same piece, different color background.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of sad when you go on and you're like, oh man, this must be worth some money. And then you start digging and then you're like, oh, it's really not worth that much. And then you go to a craft fair and you see someone selling their stuff for like $1,500 and you're like,
And moving it.
and you're doing it. Yeah. And I think like that's the important thing. Like there's almost a double-edged sword. When you are known, you do get put into a price point. Your price point is known. People can find it.
Yeah.
They can track it. Whereas if you're working in a smaller market, you are connected to a community and people will buy because of that. Local artists that capture the landscapes of the area and stuff like that are more profitable, obviously, where they're from.
Sure.
So I think you can make money. It is difficult. And I think it's difficult, honestly, as an art dealer now, too.
Right.
At this point, with the way the market is.
But I feel like you can look at any niche trade and look at it as a profession, and it's difficult. Are you going to be a professional athlete? Good luck. That's going to be difficult. You can be a professional musician? Good luck. That's difficult. Are you going to be an accountant? Everybody needs accountants.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're going to... I feel like if you're going to go for something that you love to do, you have to love it because it's going to be hard.
Well, that's the other thing. You have to go in 100%.
Yeah.
There's no, half in, half out. And I think that that's an important thing. And I think that's what's really the hurdle for a lot of people. It's fear-based. Like, can I make it? can I survive? And then that keeps them from sometimes putting all of themselves into it.
Which almost then is self-fulfilling, because if you don't put your whole self into it, I feel like you just miss.
Especially as an artist.
Yeah. Is there one piece that you've gotten to appraise that you're like, okay, I could probably fit this in my car and no one would notice I've been gone for 15 minutes and I could probably get an airline ticket? Like, is there that one piece where you're like, I could go, this is the one?
I did do a Winslow Homer study that was a gouache that I really loved. I did not have those intentions. I would never say that I had those intentions. But it was a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
And I just felt kind of honored being able to appraise it, even though the guy was not very happy with the appraisal in the very end. But,
Oh, so that, I never even really thought about that.
There's different kinds of appraisals.
So you must have people coming in expecting a certain, I paid $100,000 for this, and you have to be like, I appraised this at $65,000.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to be kind of careful with details, obviously, but there's things like, so just as a quick statement,
sure, yeah.
There's appraisals, which I do, and then that's like writing a whole document, and it's very binding, and then there's valuations. So like some people ask me for valuations where they really just want a monetary estimate of what it will sell for.
So is an appraisal more like for insurance purposes, where like I'm insuring this painting, so you write me a document?
An appraisal is an official document.
Okay.
So that's really the difference. So like, for example, Antiques Roadshow.
Yep.
They are not doing appraisals. They're doing valuations because they're not following the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, which are the court standards. So if there were ever to be litigation or something, you have to meet these standards for the different types of appraisals. Obviously, if you're doing anything for the IRS, estate tax, or charitable donation for write-offs, those documents I don't touch those. A lot of private personal appraisers don't really touch those anymore because your exposure is just immense.
So basically, you're putting yourself at risk.
You're putting yourself at risk if there's any mistakes, because those documents are going right to the IRS, and I mean, obviously, whatever I write, I'm very confident in, but the procedures are way more strict, and everything has to be, there's just a lot more risk.
It's so funny because you think of art as, do you deal with a lot of artists or just art purchasers? Because I feel like we deal with a lot of artists, and I love all you guys, but you guys are kind of flighty. Like, do you have to deal with that? Being like, I'll be there at 7 or Tuesday.
No, I wouldn't appraise someone's own work. That would be kind of hard, I find. Actually, I don't even know exactly how I would do that. Just because they're the ones who are really setting their value in the marketplace. And whether it sells or not, they're going to be able to track whatever their stuff is sold for, So that would really be what I'd be using.
So for like a baseline of what something is worth, you would look at what the artist sells it for?
Okay, so there's so many interesting facets to this. So it really depends on what you're doing. So I work mostly, if I'm doing a valuation, I'm trying to tell someone how much I think it would sell for. I'm going to look at the most recent sales, mostly of comparable property, because most of the time, you can't, not everything's a print. You can't just go buy another one.
Exactly, yeah.
So I find similar size, medium, if I can, stuff by the same artist. Sometimes that's not possible. And I compile a list, and then I try to figure out exactly what the most likely value is, and if that's at auction or in private sale, what the best thing is. And then for insurance, you're giving them a number to replace or to cover, so that the insurance company can like indemnify the client, so that they're made whole again. So you're actually not supposed to use selling prices. So like if something's sold, if it's a print and the same piece sold like a month ago, like the same print, I wouldn't use that price because that is no longer on the market. So therefore, I'm looking for comparables that are on the market. So I'm looking for asking prices. I know that's confusing.
So if I bought a piece. If Fish did a print, because that's super funny, and I bought it for $250, and I brought it to you, and the print's no longer available, and for whatever reason, it's gone viral, and now is selling for $750,000. When you do the IRS thing, does it end up being more the price that I paid for it, or more the replace value?
So this would be insurance, not IRS,
right,
just to be clear. But it would be the replacement cost, and you use replacement cost used because it's an antique, and the idea is that it's an appreciable property.
So it's more how much it would cost to replace.
Yeah, because there's a few different replacement costs. There's used. You can replicate. There's different things, but for antiques specifically, you can't buy a new one.
Right.
It's not a TV.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would
unless it's an antique TV.
Very true. But yeah, no. For the most part, you have to find the best matching that you can on the market. And this is where it gets tricky because I have to talk to a lot of dealers. I don't have intentions of buying these things.
Right, so they don't really want to talk to you.
And it can be different. Yes. I end up,
why are you wasting my time?
I've talked to people out in Norway to get information. I've been all over the place.
Yeah. So, for an artist, and this may not be your area, so if I have art to sell, do you have advice for them on how to get it out there? Is that something that or is that just kind of more of a art dealer kind of thing?
It depends on what level of artist you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're just a local artist, I think a lot can be done in crafts fairs, and there are people who make a lot of money doing those fairs. Antique shows, I don't suggest. They're hard. That market also isn't as great as it used to be. The attendance isn't the same. I
feel like the local artists have more. It's more than just the work itself, that sells the piece. It's kind of getting to know the person. If the person's likable, they have a lot easier time moving piece. I have friends that sell tons of pieces, and they're super great people that you can sit and talk to for hours. And then I have people that maybe not sell so much, maybe be a better artist that just are kind of socially awkward. And you're like, you could do a lot more. Just get out there and go talk to people.
Yeah, and that's why I say the crafts fairs, and what I was trying to get at earlier for artists, where they are is a good place for them to make money, and they can make money. They can make better money in that market. But if you take your stuff out to California that you do here, it might not be worth as much.
Right.
If I have city landscapes, I'm going to try to sell them in the city.
Right.
But if I have the pieces, I have.
You're not going to try and sell paintings of the Plymouth Rock in Sheboygan.
Exactly. I have two pieces by a guy named Emil Bistrom, and he was part of the Taos movement, and he did transcendental paintings, and they're pretty cool. But I would never try to move them around here,
Yeah.
And I always, whenever I try, I talk to people out in New Mexico and stuff like that. But I think that staying in your community has a lot to offer, and you don't have to just sell to people in your community. When people come on vacation and stuff, honestly, they're looking to pick up stuff.
Something something that kind of reminds them of when they were here or whatever.
And if you're in a vacation spot that people like to go,
people like to come to Plymouth.
There will be people with money.
Yeah.
So when you hit those seasons, you can really sell.
Nice. Have you ever had to tell someone to be like, I have this Picasso that I want you to, either regardless of what, whether it's an IRS thing or just valuation or and you have to go, yeah, this is not what you think it is. Have you ever had to burst someone's bubble and ruin their day? So I feel like that would be really bad.
I have disappointed people in terms of the amount that they thought they would get. I'd say the worst one was a valuation I recently did, because I do valuation work for I can do that for anyone in the country if they email me and like we can contact. If they can get me good enough photos, I'll work with it. I won't do it for insurance because those are more official documents.
Right.
But, I had a woman send me some pictures. Oh God, what was his name? Something Levy. I'd never heard of him before, but he had just died.
Yeah.
Like 6 days later, this woman calls me.
Oh, Jesus.
And
I'm sorry, Ms. Vulture.
And this is where I start to feel bad because I'm like, I sometimes end up charging more than something's worth in this case, but I have to state a certain amount because I do a flat rate for those types of valuations. I can never charge based off how much something is.
Right.
So...
And if it's worthless, it's not your fault to tell them
exactly.
it's worthless.
And the worst part was I put in so many hours just trying to find something more beneficial for this woman because I felt terrible.
Yeah.
Some of his stuff hangs in like the White House. It's all over the country. He's done portraits of Oprah Winfrey, Whitney Houston.
And it's just not worth that much? Is it just
well,
he's not
a portrait's
artist,
only... Portraits are a bad market. Because unless it's someone super famous... Like, if she had Oprah's portrait...
Right, yeah.
Maybe, but, like, his personal work, it was so hard to find anything. I called auction houses. I called everyone. I ended up finding 2 people were selling on eBay. Now, this wasn't an insurance.
Right.
So I'm not going to take their asking price.
Right.
I'm trying to find out. Also, I wouldn't just take like a random number off eBay. I like to compile enough information.
Yeah.
But someone was asking for like $3,000 for the same piece she had, and like through like some deep research after like 6 hours, I was like, "This is probably worth $36." So I got
36.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think I got on eBay and I started talking to the person. And I was like, "I'm just curious. Like, how long have you had this posted for?" And he's like, 3 years. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Yeah, because nobody's willing to pay that price because every other piece I was able to see sold by him, nothing surpassed a total of like $60.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my. And his stuff is hung at the White House?
Yes, but those are portraits. So this is where it's interesting.
That's so amazing.
He was really well known in the African American community and had done a lot of great things in the arts and like was well known. But his personal art just wasn't really worth anything, and it still isn't. But this was one of those funny things, like when you asked me if when someone dies, is their art worth more? I mean, I was doing this within 2 weeks of his death, but this woman like called me and she was like, "Well, he's dead. Isn't it going to be worth more?" And I was like, "Well, like if I had
let his body cool down a little bit."
Well, I was like, if a rock star and I, both died, and we wrote a song, like his song's going to be worth way more money than mine. And then she's like, "Well, can you find out how much Oprah paid for her piece, her portrait?" And I was like, "No." I was like, that's not
the same thing. Yeah.
Well, I also just couldn't do that. I was like, I don't have access to Oprah Winfrey's like personal.
You don't have her checking account number?
Exactly. And I told her once again, I used the musician example. I was like, if I owned a guitar, or if I owned a guitar and died, it wouldn't be worth more money the next day. If that guy owned a guitar, and died, it was his. Yeah. Like, you're it's worth it because of him and Oprah's that portrait. So it was tough.
It's funny, we did an art show this past summer, and it was our second annual one. It's a charity show. We call it Arts for Animals. The proceeds go to the Plymouth Animal Shelter. And a woman, fairly local artist, had passed away, and her estate donated a lot of her work.
Mm-hmm.
And she had like decades and decades of portraits of her pets. And they were gorgeous. They were absolutely beautiful. We didn't sell a single one because nobody wants a portrait of someone else's pet.
Nobody wants a portrait of somebody else.
Yeah, they want a portrait of their pet.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are beautiful drawings of dogs and cats. I mean, phenomenal, to the point where I'm looking at them and going, it is a drawing, not a, like, just gorgeous. But no one was interested.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I kind of get it, though. I
totally get it. I wouldn't want a rando picture of some dog. I would want my dog.
I don't even love the ancestral portraits we have at my house. Personally, they don't do it for me, and they're creepy.
They're creepy. Is there a certain style of art that you are kind of like, I don't understand why people are paying a lot of money for this?
A lot of stuff that sells now. Like, just in general. I think that the market's really interesting. People are just, they're putting money into stuff that I don't fully understand. A lot of solid canvases of one color. You know, the stuff just doesn't speak to me personally. But,
do you feel at that point they're purchasing the name and not the actual art?
Well, I find it interesting that somehow these people were made. Like, these artists, they got
to the point where they can sell a canvas that's just pink?
Yeah, but I think some of them honestly start out this way, and I think it's interesting when you look at galleries and how they promote people and stuff like that. I don't know exactly. I guess it's like a scene, and maybe it's just one that, like, I don't understand. Like, I don't want to, you know, knock anyone's, like, taste.
You can throw shade. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, and the amount of money that goes into it, I mean, I don't know. Also, because you don't really buy some of this, but some of the installation work I see is just weird.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of those things. Like, it's not work that's done for sale.
Yeah.
You can't buy an installation and be like, I want that in my living room. So there is art that is simply done for art's sake.
Concepts, just getting an idea out there, which I totally appreciate that idea. I just think it's a little weird sometimes when you see, like, maggots crawling on something in a museum, and I'm like, you know what? Life cycle, I get it, but
but really, ugh, yeah. The one that I think most recently blew my mind in probably immediately proving themselves wrong was Banksy.
The shredder?
The shredder. Which is like, oh, haha, you bought this piece and I shredded it, and you're like, and you just made it worth 5 times as much just because it's famous.
That whole thing really bothers me.
Why?
Well, I'm bothered by the auction house.
The auction house that did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they claim that they didn't know that was there. I mean, that's ridiculous. If you have a piece that's worth that much money, when I do an appraisal, like...
How about just putting it on the wall? You have to be like, this isn't just a canvas. Like, there's something attached to this.
Inspect it.
Yeah.
You know, like, people take frames apart. I take frames apart all the time.
Yeah.
Like...
I'm just thinking of just the sheer weight. Like, I can pick up a painting and be like, there's more than just a painting here.
I don't know. I'll tell you what. There are some frames that are extremely heavy.
Yeah, that's true.
I deal with some stuff that, like, I'm like, Jesus. Some of the hardware putting it together and, like, the solid plywood behind it. Like, as backing. I mean, but
So you think they knew and just kind of...
I think if they didn't, it makes them look really bad. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like, if you're going to buy something for that much money from an auction house that's that reputable, why are they not inspecting?
But and like I said, but that same aspect is it went from I don't remember what it sold for.
Well, it's the statement.
Yeah. And after the shredding, though, it's got to be worth more just because it's famous.
The interesting concept, though, is it might monetarily be worth more, but now what is it worth to the person that bought it? Like, what value did they see it in the first place? Because if their value was in the image itself, it wasn't about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, were they buying it because it was Banksy, or were they buying it because they... I mean, the image was really simplistic.
Well, a lot of his work is that sells. Right. But, I mean, I just mean that it could completely devalue it, even if it has this monetary value. It could be now worthless to them.
So they could just be like, let's get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, you just bought something, and now it's not what you thought you bought. And
right.
What value does it have to you as your owner? Like, what pleasure do you get out of it? Like, you know, sometimes you have to take that into consideration when you're...
Because they might have actually been like, oh, I have this perfect spot for this. And now the piece is technically twice the size because there's shreds of it hanging out the bottom. And like, well, it's not gonna fit above the credenza now. Do you feel the art market on that stage is more about, like, I hear a lot where people be like, oh, it's money laundering for the mob and this, that, and the other thing. Is there truth to that, or is it...
Oh, man.
Like, I'm not asking to say anything that's going to get you whacked, but
that's above my pay grade. Yeah. I don't know. Prices can be manipulated. The whole thing can be manipulated. I mean, you can have people show up and bid up on things. You can have, all the online auction sites are like affecting values. Because now people don't have to be present there. So there's more bidding. There's less things that are going like unsold. So less things are getting burned, if something doesn't sell at auction, then once it's shown, it makes it look bad and it actually can devalue the piece.
Right. Because then no one wants it. So why would I buy that?
So everyone's making more money.
Yeah.
But just the way that you place items can affect the value. If you put something really crappy in front of something that's mediocre, and after seeing that crappy thing and then see the mediocre thing,
they're like, ooh, yeah.
And also, estimates. Estimates are not appraisals, and I think a lot of people get confused there.
Yeah.
That's not, they're just suggestions, basically.
So let me ask you this, because I've heard this before, where people say if you put a reasonable price on it, it can actually hurt your sale because people feel like there's less value there. So say I have a piece, 2 pieces, identical. I put $50 on one, I put $600 on the other. I can't sell the $50 one, but the $600 one sells right away because someone's like, ooh, this is there truth to that?
That's just one of those things, like, this is going to sound weird, but a piece of artwork is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, 2 guys could walk in and one guy could feel it's worth 50 and pick that piece up, and another guy can feel it's worth 600. So, you might be sitting with something longer. It's the same as marketing anything. Like, I don't think it necessarily... it devalues you. If that piece sells for 50, then that is a sold price. And if that's ever, if people can find that out, then yeah,
you're now a $50 artist.
Yeah. That's another issue, overexposure.
Mm-hmm.
Too many pieces in at once tends to devalue. But I don't think that... I don't know. It's an interesting question, but I don't think it necessarily devalues.
What's your biggest pet peeve about your job? Like, is it, I'm tired of looking at this particular artist? Am I tired of, the style of art? Am I tired of this person complaining that I didn't get, like, what is the one thing that you wish everyone knew?
Without being too detailed, I think that,
you don't, like, name a name.
Yeah, no, God, no, I won't.
Steve Smith and, Cincinnati, Ohio needs to learn.
I would say I just kind of have issues in some of the ways that appraisals are not monitored, but like membership to certain programs.
What do you mean?
So there's different like schools, kind of. Like, I'm technically a member of an organization, and that organization is... like, has these requirements for me to use their name and stuff like that. And I gotta be honest, I'm not really getting a lot of value out of it. But it costs me $500 a year to be a member. And then I have to pay them to take their courses.
Right.
When in reality, I can just be a member of a smaller organization, which I am switching this year to a different organization that I'm kind of a pseudo-member of already.
And do these organizations kind of lend you credibility when you...
So it's kind of about credibility, but at the end of the day, as long as you're USPAP compliant, which those are...
As long as you're what?
USPAP, so that's that uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. Those are the court standards.
Yeah.
So what these larger organizations do is they put a few more sanctions.
Yeah.
And sometimes my issue is not necessarily the money.
He signs the same papers, but when he does it for us, he's a nice pen.
Well, it's that, and it's not so much the money that you pay them, because they do help get you more exposure. And and they do give you a network of people that you can contact who can help you. But I think what they end up doing is it can cost the client more.
Right. Because then you have to mark up.
You have to do things that, like, honestly, I don't think are necessarily beneficial to the process and kind of slow it down.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be thorough, but I'm saying that, like, I always make sure that, you know, I'm doing things to what the legal standards are. And it's not lazy. I know a lot of people who don't even do that necessarily, you know? And it's not that it's legal, like, in the sense that, like, it's that if you went to court, like, these would be flaws and you'd be liable for mistakes. But it doesn't mean that your numbers are wrong, you know? At the end of the day, you just have to show that you have to show your train of thought and have all your work file information kept for like 5 to 7 years.
It's weird because, like, I never, you know, my art appraiser experience has been, you know, like you said, the Antique Roadshow and things like that. And it never occurred to me that, you know, when you put your name on it, that you are, you know, liable for. I'm sure it stops fraud from you being like, it's worth $12 million and kind of like jacking up the prices on stuff.
I spend more time in an appraisal report on like one piece writing stipulations or inserting stipulations than I do on the actual, like, and when I say that.
So what kind of, what do you mean by stipulations?
This can only be used for this intended use that was requested by this person on this date. I inspected this piece of art per this person's request on this date in front of them in their home or wherever the location is.
So you can't, so it's not like they can be like, oh, this is worth $12 million and been like, well, why there's peanut butter and jelly down the front of it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like I gotta say, I use the cost approach, the replacement costs based off of and this is where, like, based off the definition stated in this book on this page.
Yeah.
And this is the reason that these other cost approaches were not appropriate for the. I mean, at the end of the day,
it almost sounds like you're a lawyer more than you're an art appraiser.
Well, that's why, it's not. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
I enjoy the research aspect. I love research. I've loved it since I was in art history. And I started doing valuations when I worked with my grandfather. So I've been doing the research for a long time. I know how to utilize what's available to me to understand the market and stuff like that. And, like, that's another thing. Like, if I don't know about a piece, I spend time because, it's an hourly rate. I don't charge them for this, but I look up the artist. I try to understand their importance and their influence as much as I can. And then I also try to understand the market, even if it's in a different way than I would use it. Like, I look at sales prices to understand if, like, the value's going up, even if I'm doing an insurance appraisal, because I don't want to use those consummated sales to give them the value for the insurance. Mm-hmm. But I also want to understand, like, is this asking price going to be way different in 5 months, 6 months?
So you've talked about a lot of fine art, and I remember on my honeymoon, we had art auctions there. There's a lot of prints and whatnot, and I went to the guy kind of like after he finished. I'm like, hey man, I got a question for you. And he's like, what? I'm like, I picked up a H.R. Geiger sign print at Salvation Army for $25. I'm like, what's that worth? Like, and he's like, well, that depends on the room, really. He's like, if you get that in the right room, it'll go crazy. Meaning, if you get that around nerds, it'll go crazy. But do you find it's more like, how much does the subjective nature of art come into it? Where, I can take that Geiger print to 50 different art fairs, and people are just going to look at it and go, ugh. I can take it to one Comic-Con and just start, racking in, cashing in on it because it's the right avenue. Like, does pop culture weigh into it? Because you have a lot of things like, if a Simpson illustrator did a drawing, like, how does, like, all that? way into, or have you had to deal with any of that?
I almost got an appraisal. I did not take it, and it was a painting done by Sting.
By Sting? Okay.
Yes, and those are interesting situations. I didn't do the research on it because I didn't take the appraisal, but I guess I would look to see if does Sting usually make paintings? Or
right.
Maybe then I would try to find what a similar painting would sell for, but then I would also look at what effect does things that have been owned by Sting have on the value of
that's
an
like kind of the
object.
perfect thing that I was talking about, because you have like Jim Carrey does a ton of paintings now, and they're not bad, they're not great, but it's a Jim Carrey, and like how much does his name appeal to other people? And
that's another thing when you're, especially with what I focus on, which is insurance. If I'm doing a valuation, that's one thing. So I might suggest to someone like, this is your most probable if you're here, but if you go here, you might be able to bring in more, like you're discussing.
Yeah.
But when you're doing an insurance appraisal, your job is not to find the max. You never take that max value.
Is that replacement value?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's not, you want to have multiple things, and you want to kind of figure out what the most realistic value is. But you also, because it's a person and they went to go buy that someplace, you want to look at the most common market that person's known for buying something.
Yeah.
Because that's important. Like there could be one person that buys everything at a discount store, but they happen to have the same,
Well, the perfect example is that Geiger print. Like, I got it for like $25, but that's not the replacement value of it.
Yeah.
I just happened to find it.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, it's just difficult. It is an interesting situation. Now with the online market, though, that kind of like washes away a lot of those issues.
Yeah.
Because now it's accessible to everyone. It's not like back in the day where if you lived like, on the East Coast, you might not really have accessibility to buying something on the West Coast.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like those lines are a little bit more blurred. But in terms of like where the most common market for someone, like where they would purchase an item like that, you can buy glassware at BJ's, but someone else could buy it at a much more expensive store, and they never step foot into a BJ's or something like that. Like I have to take, I should be taking that into consideration.
Is there a particular artist that you feel, I'm going to say current artist, that you feel is not getting their due credit, that people should kind of look to their work? So like this guy, not even necessarily a cash value, but just like this guy is better than what he's getting noticed as, and like who's the up and coming guy? I got $100,000. Who should I spend it on?
Oh man,
I just like putting people on the spot. Really.
No, that's an interesting question. I mean,
who's the Facebook of artists before they were Facebook?
I mean, that's so tough.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even venture. It's because of people like Banksy and all this random crap that comes out. I mean, honestly, the market, like, unless there's something to like physically study, I think it's very difficult. I would say spend money on. I would invest in toys.
In toys?
Toy market is great.
Yeah.
I find the toy market to be very interesting. You get some old Batman action figures. There's a tin one that sold for
I can't
ridiculous,
even disagree with this because, like I said, I own a comic store. It's like
ridiculous amount of money.
Someone the other day to me is like, oh, I'm going to call, I have this kid and he's getting into Transformers and I'm going to call my aunt who has my old Transformers and let him play. I'm like, don't fucking let him play. Are you out of your mind? I'm like, well, I'm like, they're huge money.
I'll tell you what, if you're at flea markets and you see something that's old and it's $5 and it's in a box, just buy it.
Just buy it
and look at it later.
Oh my God, the number of times that I've been like, I don't know if that's worth the $7, and then got home and like, God damn it, I should have picked that up.
No, I saw some old Star Trek Barbie, like,
was it the Barbie and Ken 2-pack?
Yeah.
Yeah, see. I know.
I was looking at that, and I was like,
God, what does that go for now? Is that huge money?
I was like, how much are they selling this? I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like, how much are they selling this for? And I was like, no, it's like $35. I was like, I'll look at it later. If it's worth something, I'll go pick it up. But like, you never know. Like, and a lot of people can do that work on their own. Appraisers are really more valuable for like the written documents.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of people who I call American pickers who are doing kind of like what we were just talking about. And those are the people that call me, and generally they don't get the news that they wanted. And then, it's tough.
And because like I said, I did that for years, and it was the combination of passing over stuff that was cheap money that I'm like, I just don't know enough about it. And then you go do the research and be like, I'm going to shoot myself in the face because I just messed up big.
Yeah.
Or been like, oh, this is easy, and then you pick it up and you're like, I can't get rid of this stupid thing. Pop culture is huge right now, and that's kind of why I brought up the Geiger thing and Simpsons.
Well, pop culture is always big. I think it's more the effect of nostalgia, which actually does, is like a thing that is considered. Like, nostalgia does affect price. So when you're doing an appraisal, like, the 90s are really big right now.
Yeah.
Like, you have to like consider those things, and then it can affect that general idea. Can be like, okay, then I need to take that into consideration with certain things from the 90s that are possibly like someone has me looking at.
When I first got into that business, Howdy Doody was huge money. And now I feel like you're going to have a hard time selling it because, not to be rude, those people have died off. Like, I have no fond memory of Howdy Doody, and
and that's what's interesting about the market. And I think that it's a pretty harsh transition right now between like what's no longer in, and there's so much of it that people are sitting on and we're expecting a return on.
I have 8 trash bags of Beanie Babies I want you to appraise.
I've been there.
Shut up. Have you really?
I
would love that. I would love to be on that phone call.
And it's just, it's tough. It's very interesting. I see it with some of the stuff my grandfather has, the market tanks, and then you wait for it to come back and trends change.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that things aren't worth anything, but, sometimes you hold on to things and you want, because there was a specific value you wanted to get back, or, it's one of those things that I find most interesting. I think the nostalgia, and that's why I say toys. First of all, the toy market's strong.
It's huge.
But, if you have it, chances are you had already invested in it.
Yeah.
Although you probably opened the box, because
that's what they're meant for.
Yeah. If not, well, fuck, you probably bought 2.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It's like, there were so many people. I remember, like, I was kind of just on the tail end of the cusp of where people were figuring out there's a lot of money in toys, and like, well, they would tell their kids, I'm going to buy this for you, but you can't open it. Be like, don't tell a kid that, because not only is it devaluing the toy in the future, because the point of them being mint on card is because most people save them that way. So the more people who save them that way makes it worth less. But in the same aspect, that kid is not going to have a fond memory of playing with it. So when he gets to that nostalgia zone, he's like, yeah, I don't give a shit about that. It hung on my wall. I don't care. And I think that's why the booming market now is in video games. The vintage video games are huge money, because that's just that right sweet spot. Those people are now becoming adults, maybe just starting families, have some disposable income, and there's, video game cartridges that are going to go for multiple hundreds of dollars.
I know a guy that got super into CDs. It was records were starting to go out a little bit.
Yeah.
CDs were coming back, which
Yep.
I was like, what? And then, I shit you not, I went over to his house one day to play Settlers of Catan. And I was like,
Shout out Longest Road. I love Settlers of Catan. Sorry, go on.
And I was like, what are you holding? He's like, oh, it's my cassette player. And I was like, why?
Yeah, when did that become a thing?
And
my
he's like,
nephew has a cassette player.
He said cassettes are coming back. Look at the market. I didn't look at it.
It's so stupid.
I had
They're
no
terrible.
interest in it.
They're
but
terrible.
Now it's like all of a sudden, I mean,
they sucked when I had them. Like, I don't want that.
I don't know. There's a couple cassettes I'm still like. I had a Heart cassette that was, I think it was Magic. I don't know how, but I swear it flipped over on its own. It just never stopped.
But, like, if it wasn't available any other way, that's one thing. But cassette is not a good format.
No.
At all. Like, you can be like, oh, vinyl. Yeah, vinyl has a real distinct sound. Cassette has a shitty sound.
Yeah, well, it's coming back, and that's the thing, nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like, what value does it have to you? And, like, that's the thing, like...
So, are you saying buy what you like?
Yeah, fascinating. I know. I mean, personal value and monetary value do not... I mean, they do kind of coincide.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look, we could both have the same glass in front of us, but one of us is willing to pay more for it because it has more value to us, or we like it more, and therefore its monetary value to you is higher.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily change the monetary value of the glass itself.
Right.
You know.
And that's that kind of... That's what made eBay, and it's what makes every auction an auction. Is like, I've been in a comic book shop auction where, you know, there's amazing pieces and a box of unopened. Do you remember the show V? TV show V.
Sounds familiar, but I'm not.
God damn it!
I can't. If you
people who are younger than me, it's like aliens come down. They're lizards, but they look like regular people at first, and you find out they're lizards later. It's a thing.
I mean,
so an unopened box of trading cards went for crazy money, and one guy's like, "I need one card," and it's like he wanted one card out of this unopened box, and he was just not gonna let anyone else get it.
Yeah, I find myself to be a novice nerd.
Okay,
like, I love comic books, but I never really had them. Like, I always wanted to be a cartoonist when I was a kid. That was like always my dream. I love Batman. Had the whole animated series box set. Great purchase. Probably
phenomenal
not
art.
worth as much right now.
Doesn't matter. But this is that thing. It's
exactly.
important to you.
So I totally get those things though. Like, and I think that's why I like the nostalgia aspect and the toys and the comic books and all that stuff. I think it's all very interesting, but it's all so just. It's almost like Bitcoin to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crapshoot. To speculate that far into the future is so hard because it's going to tank before it goes up. Generally,
yeah,
you know, like generally those toys or something, you know, are selling at tag sales for like 50 cents opened. You know what I mean? Or like people are like, or you're buying comics out of a cardboard box, you know, or like whatever. And then one day that value starts to appreciate again, and it's hard. It's hard to hold on.
Some weird movie comes out. Someone buys a property for some comic book that you were like, no one knows what the hell this is. And next thing you know, it's a huge property. Or the thing that I find is the hottest thing right now is when a character is introduced to a Marvel movie, their first appearance skyrockets like unheard of amounts because everybody wants that first appearance.
Which I find it very interesting. I wonder what's going to happen with toys like way out in the future. Because they're just kind of suck now. Like I find a lot of action figures aren't what they used to be.
No, they're not. I think Todd McFarlane fucked it up for everybody because they became in-action figures. You know, it's like, how good can the sculpt be? And that's great, but you can't play with it. And again, you lose that nostalgia because you sit on a shelf, you break its arm off, you're like, fuck it, I don't want to look at that anymore.
Well, I also think that like mass animation's getting worse in some.
You think so?
In some ways. I mean, not if you watch like the Batman movies that are released or like those movies that are being released, but like the stuff that like, I don't know, you see like on general like cable television, I think is like really getting like dumbed down, like in comparison to like the Ninja Turtles that I watched when I was a kid. Like,
oh, here we go. He's gonna start telling people to get off his lawn.
But you know,
Rick and Morty's nothing.
like there's I feel like they're just so simplified so much. And I'm not talking about like Rick and Morty so much, but like, I don't know. I see those like new, like Batman the Bold or whatever.
I don't even know that one.
Or the Brave or something like that.
My daughter likes Gravity Falls. Is that one? I don't even really know what the hell it's about. I feel super old
And
right
simplifying doesn't mean that it has to be bad. I mean, Clone High. Did you ever watch that?
now. Oh my god, I remember that.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and it was simple.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean that there is no artistic value. Dexter's Lab wasn't like this huge, elaborate thing, but there was a lot more levels to it, the backgrounds, the scenery, and I feel like now, like, everything just seems like it's getting lost in some animated, like, less definition. I don't know.
Do you ever have anyone bring animation cells to you?
No.
Do you wish people brought animation cells to you?
Yes. I mostly... I tend to deal with older people who just have, I did some Robert Motherwells. I did some MC Eschers that were really cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did a print for him, and that one turned into a whole... That one got real confusing real fast.
Well, as you see, he's not really going up the stairs because the stairs are also going down. Is that what you're confused about?
More confusing. I talked to this guy that owned a gallery. Once again, I won't use names, although I wish I could because it's such a weird name.
You can tell us off, Mike.
And he had sold the painting. Like, I tracked down the original guy that sold the guy the painting. He doesn't own the gallery anymore, or the print. And then I started talking to these other guys, and basically I got stuck between two guys who hated each other. That were two of the biggest MC Escher dealers, and one of them was just like, no, that guy is like not good. Like, if like that print, like, there could be 1,000 things that could. And I was like, well, this just made my life a lot harder because I had to do my due diligence and make sure that, to the best of my knowledge, that print was in the condition that it was, and it was legit. I wasn't so worried about the legitimacy of it. Yeah. Because being a print, there was enough that I could, like, compare to, like, really, like, solidify. But there was issues with framing and matting and damage that some of this stuff would cause. And one guy referred to it as being booby-trapped. And I was just like... I don't want to take this frame apart. Like, I didn't have to originally. Like, this isn't a thing. And I was able to avoid it because I found this third guy. And he was like, yeah, I've been stuck between these guys for years. He's like, don't tell either of them that you talk to me. Don't use my name. Yeah. But he was very helpful. And I was just like, okay. Like, to the best of my knowledge, I'm going to be able to put this together. And I had to write in my stipulations.
Guy X is a douchebag. Guy B is also a douchebag. Don't ever call them.
And the funny thing is, I had to tell the guy, and I felt bad because this guy was selling MC Eschers. He knew MC Escher personally.
Oh, wow.
And he was getting the prints for nothing. And then he was selling them for up to like $20,000. And I found it very interesting because he told me this himself. And I was just like...
that seems shitty.
Like, and he was old. And I think that he was like kind of out of it. And I was able to kind of like catch him off guard because he just all of a sudden just wanted to tell me his whole life story. He's like, you should watch this video I posted about my life. And I was like, I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to subscribe to your YouTube channel, man.
But basically I was like, okay, so basically you were just ripping people off.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I don't know how that affected the market. Back then, it probably had a significant effect because he was a very large dealer of MC Escher. But MC Escher was just doing it, and he was like taking it and get them for $100, sell them for $10,000, whatever. And this is what I was saying about like how artists are presented by galleries. When we were talking about like the canvas, it's just like, well, I don't know, because somehow they're able to do it and then make them into it.
It's just fascinating. Well, I'm glad that you came in and talked to us. I didn't know exactly where this was going to go, and the fact that we ended up on Nerdland is pretty cool. But where can people go if they want to find out more about you, if they need an art appraisal? You must have a website.
I do not have a website.
You must have some sort of...
Most of my clients don't use the internet. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you have a smoke signal address? How do they get on?
So my email is appraisals by Holt. Holt is HOLT @gmail.com. And I take any appointments, just send me an email. I'll ask for a few preliminary things, a few photos, any information that you have ahead of time that could save you some money and make my job a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just be like, it's not worth my time. Your niece's drawings are nice, but no thank you. No, this was actually absolute pleasure. I'm glad we kind of bumped into each other at the beer cellar, and anyone that's into pop culture toys and beer is a friend of mine, man.
All right.
So thanks again.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, thanks for checking out the podcast. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network. There's the Bar Talk. There's Old Colony Cast. There's, of course, the Inebri-art Podcast. And our latest, Retro Redoctopus, a kind of nerd genre podcast that you can check out now, all available on our website at inebri-art.com. And pretty much available everywhere that podcasts are available, on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all those things. And if you don't see it where you're looking, let us know. We'll try to get onto that as well. And you can also email us at inebriart@yahoo.com with your questions, complaints, and suggestions. And also, if you could take the time to rate and review us on iTunes, that would be phenomenal. That helps us get more exposure and bring more of these great podcasts to your ears. And thanks again for listening.